Okay, so we're just about ready to get going and start creating our own project and start creating our own track using Maschine. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk about some of the new features, the key features that were introduced in version 1.8 of the software. I've decided to demonstrate these new features using a drum loop. Now we've got our old groups loaded up here that we had in the last tutorial, and you can see there we've got the coloring that I applied in the last kit. But in group G here, you can see I've got one sample loaded. It's a drum loop. What I've done is I've applied a simple ADSR envelope just by scrolling through the sampler module and finding envelope, just so that when we press it, it plays the drum loop through, and when I let go, it stops. This is just for demonstration purposes, nothing too complicated. You can see here on the software, your envelope's there, just full sustain. We can turn the decay down if you like. No release, no attack. So it just plays straight away and we can let go of it. Okay, and that's 122 BPM. You can tell that because it's in the file name, but that's what we're running at. And the reason I'm using a drum loop is because one of the main new features here is time stretching. It's inline time stretching, and it's it's a really great time stretch algorithm. So it's really good for changing drum loops or indeed any sample, one shots, effects, vocals, anything you load up. But it's going to work really well with this drum loop. Now, to access the new time stretch mode, we're going to need to go into sampling. So I hit the sampling button, and as soon as we do that, on the display, we get a nice overview of the sample, and on the software again, so everything's synced up. And you can see already I'm in the stretch mode. It's right here. And if you want to find it, you're just going to scroll through. You're probably going to start on normalize, I think, or reverse. I forget the default mode exactly, but just keep scrolling through all these different modes until you get to stretch. And you'll see it in the center. And as soon as you get into stretch here, there's a settings button. Now hit the settings button, and not only do we get our settings here, but we get a really great representation, a great window on the software. Now in this case, I like to use the software for the settings, just because it's a little clearer. And although you can access everything on the hardware as per usual, in this case it works nicely with the software. Now it's detected that it's 122 ppm and 4 bars, which is great because we know that that's the case. And we can time stretch this to anything we like. So let's go to 135. And just before we stretch it, you can see the auto detection is clicked on. And that's how it detected the 4 bars and 122. Let's go ahead and hit apply. And you can see the waves change slightly. And now we're running at 135 BPM. And it's that simple. And if you want to get rid of that, you can hit shift and undo, which is pad 1. And we're back to 122. Now you may have noticed that in that settings window, there's also pitch. So you can change format, you can change your tuning. And there's also a free mode down the bottom here. So if you want to change it like old style samplers like Akai's percentage, you can do so. If you want it exactly, 50% or 200% or 125% of the original, you can do. And there you go. There's our new speed. And that's great. It's really, really quick way of time stretching. And it's something that you weren't able to do in Maschine before. You had to go into an external editor. And now we can do it right here. Now I'm going to get rid of this just for this, for the purposes of this. And I'm going to show you another couple of new features. Now, these are actually in the form of effects. So we can go ahead and apply them to this drum loop here. I'm going to come out of the sampling mode. And I'm going to go into the second module here. And if you look down the list here, we've got a couple of new introductions. And the main one being Transient Master. Now, transient design is great for adding punch to sounds, adding snap to sounds, increasing the sustain of sound elements within a loop, or indeed the reverb on a single hit, or reducing those things as well. So you can reduce the snap of a sound. So if you've got an acoustic guitar loop that maybe is too plucky in nature, or a piano that's been recorded, too close and it's a little bit too in your face, you can roll back some of that attack and make it a little softer. And again, reverbs and noise within elements in loops can be reduced by reducing the sustain. So let's go ahead and demonstrate this. We can increase the attack of this loop. And you can hear straight away that it's crisper, it's sharper. And we'll just do this in real time as the loop's playing. And we can go the other way, so minus, and that's made it much softer. Now let's say we want to increase the hits, the sustain of the hits in this loop. We can go ahead and let me just get rid of that. Go ahead and increase the sustain. Now, the beautiful thing about this transient designer is that it's got a limiter, because as soon as you increase sustain or attack in a sound, you're going to increase the overall level. And in most transient designers, you've got to apply a limiter afterwards, or you've got to roll back the volume or whatever. But here we've got a really useful limiter, and this just, makes sure that it's all kept in line. But you can really make loops pump, and it's an incredibly useful tool. Now, this isn't the only new effect. We've also got a saturator, and we've always had a saturator, but now there's some new modes within it. And there's classic tape and tube, and it's this tape and tube that's interesting, especially the tube. These are brand new. We can increase drive amounts of the tube, and this is pretty much the same sort of thing as you're going to see in a tube plugin, but we can get some really crunchy effects. And there's a small EQ in here, so if you want to reduce some of the bottom end and increase some of the high end, for example. The tape's a little bit more subtle, and will allow you sort of more compression and warmth. And you can drive it using the input gain here. So if you just want to add some gentle saturation and some tape compression, the tape mode's great. Go a little bit, if you want to go a little bit harder and a little bit more aggressive, you've got a great tube saturator there. So not a huge amount of new features. We're going to see some other new features when it comes to the transport here, which can control your DAW transport. But apart from that, you've got your new colors, you've got your drive mode, you've got your transient designer, and the all-important time stretch mode, which we're going to be using in the upcoming project that we're going to build. But for now, let's move away from features and feature sets and start to look at how we can actually use Maschine to build a track. We're going to start by building our own kits, sampling our own sounds, creating our own hits. And that's the next section of this course on Maschine.